Hey everybody, Bill with American Liberty Fighters. It is Tuesday, April 4th, day 23 of my 30 videos in 30 days challenge. So I've got 1 week left. Oh, good grief. It's been a rough one. I tell you, it is difficult to find some topic to talk about on an everyday basis. If it's, I think once we get out on the homestead, it'll be a lot easier to find things to talk about. I don't really know how many I'll put out a week at that point, because we're going to have so much we're going to be doing. It's all going to depend on the time allotted for us to get things done around the homestead, as well as to put out videos. My wife has her own channel, I have my channel, so it might become an overwhelming type of thing, and we may scale it back to maybe once a week or twice a week. But anyhow, today's video, I'm going to try and keep it to a minimum. I know I've said that a few times, and I've gone like extremely long amounts of time talking and everything, but I had a subscriber ask a question. I don't know that I've really talked in depth about it. The question basically was, what was in the decision-making process for us to decide to settle on the property that we purchased. I know I talked about, the reasoning for both of us, our list of things that were must-haves or needs for us. Among those being a view, a nice view, whether it be a mountain view or what we're going to have. We wanted to have some sort of view where we could, sit out either on the porch, or we're actually going to build a little area to sit and watch the sunrise or sunset, whether it be on our porch or out in this little area that my wife has told me that I will be building. So that's just one project I'll be doing out there, and I'll probably have a video of that. But, my wife and I both had pretty much the same kind of list. Mine was, I really didn't want to be around a lot of people. I'm not a big people person. I don't like being in crowds. Crowds make me uncomfortable. I don't know if a lot of you can relate to that or not, but I'm just not a big crowd person. And living in the city, I've never felt comfortable with, a house next to a house next to a house, where you only have like a little strip of grass in between the houses, and you can wave at your neighbor every morning and see your neighbor and they can see you. Where you have to have a privacy fence in your backyard. I don't care for that kind of living. It's not what I want. It's not what I enjoy. It's not ideal for me. Other people may love that stuff, and I guess it's to each their own. More power to you. I don't hold you like as weird or anything for that. So it's not that I'm a recluse, a hermit, or antisocial. I'm just looking for peace and quiet. I don't mind neighbors, and I don't mind being neighborly. I believe in helping out in the community. I believe in helping your neighbor. I don't necessarily need to have my neighbor on top of me to believe that. I don't think. So I wanted to live more out in the country. I wanted forest. I wanted pasture. I wanted usable land, and my wife wanted more pasture than forest, because she wants more usable land. Now, like I said in my earlier video before, neither of us were looking necessarily for, more than 10 acres. I would love to have, in an ideal world, I could see, 500 acres. I'd love to have that, and to have a lot of it be forested, where I would have a lot of area for hunting, with streams in it, ponds for fishing, hunting, you know, just even if you're living out in the country, camping is fun for me. I've always enjoyed camping. So staying in a cabin isn't camping, that's staying in a cabin. And especially if the cabin is your home, then you're staying in a cabin, you're not really camping. And it's nice to be able to go camp, but be close enough to go home to the cabin where you still have some creature comforts or amenities, you know, hot water, things like that. Both of us were really looking for, like I said, usable land, pasture area. I like long driveways, so that was something for me. I like to have a pond. You know, when you have a pond or a lot of trees, you're going to have a lot of water on your land. Or at least that's what my thinking is. I may be wrong. I'm not an expert on land. But those were some of the things we were thinking when we were going through the process of looking for land for us. My wife really wanted a mountain view. We didn't actually get that. We wanted somewhere in the Ozarks. There's really not a real reason for that. It's just it was going to be, if you're in the Ozarks, it's the mountain area. There's beautiful scenery, and so we were looking, you know, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, in those areas, and we had actually looked further southwest in Arkansas and gone to Fort Smith, and we had gone and looked at land out there. We had looked at land that was just bare land, and we had looked at land that was, you know, house and outbuildings already on the property. None of the ones we saw there were in our price range, number one, and the ones that were in our price range, they didn't pan out to be what we were actually looking for. One of them we were really hoping for in the Fort Smith area turned out to be a horrible thing. We had both had our hearts set on this property, and it had a driveway that came in that was locked up. It looked like it was locked up, and it had a main cabin and another house. It had two houses on the property, and it had a pond, and it had trees and what looked like usable land. But when we got there, we found that there were actually squatters sitting there on the side of the property, right past the entrance to the property. And the main house had been completely, utterly torn apart. Somebody had gotten in there and they had done extensive damage to the house. So we couldn't see using or living there because we didn't want to have to deal with squatters. They're living in a camper and throwing their trash everywhere. We surely didn't want to rebuild and gut two houses to make them livable. So that was something that we passed and went right back to the drawing board. For the 40-acre property that we did settle on, it wasn't the acreage that really got us. It was the price of the land, the fact that it had a cabin, and the cabin wasn't in bad shape, and it had a garage with a workshop on the back of it, and then a separate laundry building that we could make into a workshop laundry area. It's on a well. It still has city electric coming to it, which I don't find to be necessarily a problem, because I'm not wanting to go off grid. That wasn't one of the things that I had on my list, was off grid. And I guess people have a difference of opinion when you say off grid. And to me, off grid means you are not tied to the grid in any way, shape, or form. You have your own electric, whether it be generator, solar, or wind turbine power, and you have your own water source, a well, or whatever else you have in that way to have your own water, where you don't have city water, you don't have city electric, and to be truly off grid, I would think, in my mind, at least, you wouldn't have a cell phone, you wouldn't have a satellite for internet, for TV. You would be off grid, fully, completely off grid. That's off grid. You have no tie to the grid. If you're living out in the woods and you have your own energy source, your own water source, but you have internet service to your property and you have a cell phone, you're still tied to the grid. And if you think you're not, and you think that they can't find you because you aren't tied to the electric grid, well, then you're not thinking it completely through. And that's about as nice as I can put it. Because they can find you by tracking your phone. If you don't think they can track your phone, I got news for you. They can track your phone. They can ping your cell towers near you. They can find you. It's simple. If you don't think they can find you through the internet, again, they can trace you on the internet. So you're not truly off grid. Just my opinion. We're not going to be off grid. We never started this out to be off grid. We just wanted to get out in the country. I'm not a doomsdayer. I'm not a prepper in the sense of I'm going to store up all kinds of food sources and all that good stuff in this little bunker and hunker down because the end is coming. If you do that, that's on you. More power to you. I have nothing against that. I don't judge you for it. It's not for me. Simple. My view on prepping would probably line up more with what like Janel Zero would have in the sense of prepping. And it really stems from what did our ancestors do? They went out and they prepared or prepped for winter in the spring and summer. They prepped for summer in the winter and the spring. They always were prepping for the next season. They were putting away, and prepping for their garden. They were doing all these things to prepare for each change in the season. And for us, it's going to be kind of the same thing. We're not necessarily going to store up, massive amounts of stuff and do that kind of stuff. That's just not what I'm into, and I don't believe that's what my wife would be into. So, anyhow, our main goal, like I said, was just to kind of be more in the country. I've always wanted to live in the country, and I've done it a couple times in the past, whether I was married at the time or single. My wife and I have been married before, and so we've been divorced before. I've never had a partner in life, what you would call a helpmate, I guess, biblically. My helpmate, my wife, I've never had someone who was so selfless in their thinking that they would want to help me to fulfill a lifelong dream of living in the country. Now again, when I was a kid, I always wanted to be, I always wanted to grow up and be a cowboy, living out on the range, doing that kind of cowboy stuff. I'm almost 50 now. I've got a busted up back. I've done the cowboy thing in my younger days, riding bulls and horses and wild living and things like that. I can't do that now. If I were to get on a bull, I think I'd be laid up for quite a long time. Even if I were to ride the 8 seconds and come off and make a perfect landing, I would somehow hurt myself. I'm pretty sure of that. I've already done the injuries that I need, to go through. And all I really want now, I would love to have a horse at some point down in the future. Because I always enjoyed riding horses. That's something that I've enjoyed. But just to get back out in the country and live a more simple life, a more relaxed life, to make my own way, to not have to worry about clocking in and clocking out, and going to work and being there on a specific time. I don't want to do that anymore. And I have someone that I'm with that has agreed and partnered with me that wants the same thing I want in that way. So, I guess if you're looking to go and move out in the country or go off grid, and you're looking for someone to give you pointers on how they found their spot, their property, I guess my pointers are of the wants and the needs. And as you're looking at the properties that you're thinking would be ideal for you, go through the list and tick off those things that are needs that you need to have, and then the luxuries of the wants that are there, and weigh them against, can I live without the things that this property doesn't offer me? The only thing for us that the property we currently have doesn't offer us is more acreage, which we can rectify at a later time, and a mountain view for my wife, which was more of a want than a need. And like I said, we have found spots where we can actually set it up and we can still have that ideal, romantic, beautiful, picturesque view, either in the morning at sunrise or in the evening at sunset. So we're both pleased with how this has all come down. We had to have the property that met our criteria, that met our price range, and that ultimately, because we've been praying about it the entire time, and not just praying and doing what we want, but we've been praying and listening and asking that if this is God's will for us, that He's going to bless it and He's going to make a way for it. And if it's not what He has in store for us, that this is not the plan for us, that He let us know and close the door and not allow the deal to go through. And at every step, it's been blessed, and again, we've had it go through. It's ours now, and a lot of the things that we were worried about, really we didn't need to worry about, because they're not problems. They were just things that we needed to verify. So the last few things that we have a problem with that need to be resolved are things that we're going to take care of. I mean, we're not going to have the equipment that we want to have. We don't necessarily need a tractor, but we want a tractor. I want a tractor. it's easier to mow with a tractor. You know, I don't necessarily want to go on a riding lawnmower and mow, 20 acres or 10 acres of property of pasture area, because I think that, there's not going to be a riding mower that's going to mow that much without a lot of issues. So, a tractor is what we need. An ATV or a UTV of some sort, whether it be a two-seater or a single-seater. That's something that we need, but we are not in need of it right now because I've already walked the property. I know I can walk it. And as much of a pain as it is to walk the property, it can be done that way for now, and we save up for it. One of the other main goals that we had in order to get the property was not to go further in debt. So if you're looking for a way to minimize your debt, get out of debt, not go back into debt, and you're wanting to move out in the country, and you're looking for a property, again, wants and needs, make a list. If you're married and you're both going into this, you both need to make your own list. You need to match up your lists, and it can't just be one person's list trumps the other person's list. You're going to have to compromise at that point and find a common ground for both of you, or you're going to move out on your property and you're going to hate it. So, I'm trying to think of anything else, but it's very simple things that we did, and I'm pretty sure I covered some of them before. If there's any other questions anybody has about what it was that we decide, why we decided what we decided, and how we came to it, or whatever else, we had an in-depth conversation with another YouTuber at a specific period in time. He was part of a network of YouTube channels. Grandpa's Farm is his channel name. He's changed a little bit since then. But he's a real estate agent, and he was talking to us about things, about what it takes really to be defined as a homestead in the terminology of what a homestead is. You can have a homestead on a quarter acre, a half acre, an eighth of an acre, or whatever. It's whatever it takes land-wise to grow what you want and do what you want and have the home that you want. So I'm not necessarily agreeing or saying that, you got to have 40 acres or more in order to make a homestead, but he made it made a lot of sense how he explained how they came up with 40 acres made a homestead. And that's before the turn of the century, before the Industrial Revolution and all those things happened, where how many acres can you plow within a day? Well, 40 acres would be what you could plow. What do you need in order to grow crops for your family? Well, 40 acres seemed to be pretty good. And then if you wanted wood, well, you needed another 40 acres. It went on and on and on and so forth. So it wasn't even 24 hours after having the conversation that my wife ran across the property that we bought, 40 acres, pardon me, 40 acres, a cabin, and two outbuildings. Well, you could say three outbuildings, really, because the pole barn is going to be back. I'm either going to rip that down and rebuild it, or I'm going to rip it down and move it and put something else in its place. But, it was all fenced in, everything, it looked great. And when I went and I stood on the ground, and that's the last thing I had to do before making a decision to even give an offer on the property, was I wanted to go and visit the property and see how I felt standing on the property, breathing the air on the property. Walking through the cabin. Can I imagine myself living here? Do I feel like this is where I need to be, this is where I belong? And that right there for me was it. That at that point, when I'm standing out in the open on the property, and we've walked through the cabin, I close my eyes, I take a deep breath, and I'm so relaxed. I felt so relaxed, so at ease. That moment right there was the moment that I felt the most at peace I've ever been in my life. And I knew then this was the property that was mine. That was for me. I've walked it. I've claimed it. It's mine. And it all worked out in the end to be exactly that. I walked it, I claimed it, and it's mine. And now all I have to do is patiently put everything in order, get it all ready for me and my wife, and move there. And we're working towards that goal. We're going to move there. We're going to be there, and it's not going to be much longer. I said in an earlier video that I really needed to get my mind right in order to do this. And I honestly think that if anybody's thinking about doing this and making a complete change of life, going from the city to the country, and if you've never lived in the country before, and you've never lived out on a well, you've never lived on a septic system, if this is what you're thinking of doing, you've got to have your mind right. You've got to switch gears. You've got to change what your mindset is. And you know, because if you don't and you get out on your property and things don't go the way you think they should, and you're thinking on a city level instead of a rural country level, you're going to hate it and you're going to fail because you're going to quit. So, I mean, that's where we're at now. We're transitioning from living in the city, in the community, where you've got neighbor upon neighbor upon neighbor, and restaurants all over the place. And like right now, I'm sitting in a Walmart parking lot. You have grocery stores and hardware stores and all these big box stores all over the place. And you move out in the country, you've got to plan differently. You've got to shop differently. Your entire life has to change. So it's a whole mindset thing. And for me, it even goes even further as all my life I've worked for somebody else. And now I'm going to work for me and my wife. We're going to work for us. Everything we do will be for us. I've never done that. She has. So my mindset has to be different on, I'm not working to make somebody else money and then I get a cut of that. I am working to make my money on my own. I make my schedule. I make my plans. I decide my job for the day. So, I mean, I'm ready for it. Again, I'm patiently waiting, and I hope I've answered the question that was asked about, how we came to decide on the property that we picked. And I think that the individual that asked that question, I mean, if you just make your list of what you want, what you really want, if you have a specific location, We wanted to make sure that we would get 4 seasons. And here in Texas, it gets brutally hot in the summer. And we have mild winters. I mean, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you'll get snow periodically. You get more ice than snow. I don't like driving in the snow and ice in Texas. I've lived all over the country, all over the states. And I've lived overseas in different locations where we get a lot more snow and the winters are a little bit more brutal. But I don't want to live in an area. My body I've been real hard on my body in my 49, almost 50 years. And when it gets cold, my bones ache. I don't like being cold. I'd much rather be hot. So we wanted to go where the climate was going to be not hot nor cold. We wanted it to be kind of mild. And that was another reason we were looking in the Ozarks. I mean, I don't mind some snow. I just don't want to be snowed in for ever. That's why we're not going to ever move to Alaska. Because I'm just not that guy. I don't want to live in that cold, snowy weather. I'd love the hunting and fishing, but I've done ice fishing before in my life in Minnesota, and I don't need to ever do that again. So, anyhow, I've gone on for quite a long time. This video has gone on. If you have any more questions, comments, whatever, leave them down below in the comments section. I do try to answer all questions, all comments. I appreciate everybody watching, and especially on this video, if you've made it from the beginning to end, I appreciate that. And I failed at making this one a short video. So anyhow, day 23 is done. Waiting on day 24 tomorrow. Have a great Tuesday evening, and we'll see you on tomorrow.